Ahlan wa sahlan and welcome to this video. So today I have some things I want to discuss or just bring up and talk about, and I wrote them down, so I'm just gonna follow the notes I did on this, and it is concerning like religious expression. So for example the hijab, and in both in like the social media context and in reality, like people who are in this world who's wearing it and interacting and so forth. So I feel like when people talking about the hijab in social medias, they are putting a lot of focus on the person behind it who is wearing it. Like the people who are wearing it in social media is like role models for a group of other people who also are potentially wearing it or who is interested in starting to wearing it. So besides being in social media versus the like reality where people they changing and doing things and mainly like having their identity and their actions perceived by people around them, in social media things are more like exposed to a wider audience, and also it may not even be the exact image of the person outside of the social media. You can never really be sure about these things, and it's important to like consider it when you're watching people like, I don't know, taking off their hijab in social media versus people doing it in reality. Because if you have like followed someone in social media, and they are like taking off their hijab, and all of a sudden that person is like, you feel like that role model, it's kind of conflicting or you towards what you were expecting from the person. It's still something that is a constructed image in the media and the social media, and it may not even correspond to the actual person in reality. And at the same time, it is just one person who is doing something. It's not like the entire world who is like depending on that person's specific action, do you understand? Like there's like that difference, but for some reason, because the audience is very much following that person's actions as if that person is a leader to them, it becomes like this whole like people are really watching and feeling that whatever that person is doing is going to have an impact in their life. But it's still a choice in watching it and sort of following that person, even if it's in social media. But I don't know if you're noticing it, but as this whole social media is going on, it becomes more similar, the expressions that you see, because at the root of the materialistic consumerism and capitalistic society, there is some form of westernized culture that is being like sort of infused together with the consumerism and all of this. So because people are tending towards that specific kind of culture that is rooted in some westernized thinking of consumerism and maybe transparency in the sense that being more visible is better because it's easier to control people who are visible and who are exposing things about their mind and about even their body, their physical appearance and stuff. It has probably some roots in the thinking of like in colonialistic thinking, as well the sort of efficiency in public governance and all these things concerning transparency. But because these sort of institutions, I don't know if you can call social media an institutions, like an institution, But because all of these like capitalism and consumerism and everything is like connected with this Western way of conducting things, and all these other institutions that are related to each other, such as the medical institution, secular educational systems, and the state, like the governing sort of body, and with its citizens and stuff. Like all of these things are like linked together, and it becomes, if you starting to sort of obeying all of the values and things, it will have an impact on you and how you're expressing yourself. Because such as like fashion industry, there's modest fashion, and there's like this mainstream fashion that is mostly, like sort of having an idea of displaying women as an object, and also displaying women in like a transparent form of clothing and all these things. And because of these like tendencies towards ascribing these as some form of values that are attractive and positive and all these things, you start to sort of become influenced by it. And so if you live in a society, in the real world, where you are part of the workplaces of secular institutions, and you have exposure to fashion industry, where you are viewing such as like kind of bare skin and stuff, as something that is a positive attribute and positive like status symbol. Of course you will be impacted by it, because it's a psychological process of becoming influenced by such images. And if that start to become who you are, but by you applying those concepts and ideals to your own self-image and your own personality, you will not be your own person, because you will be influenced by the mainstream ideal that is sold to you through the media and through like marketing strategies that are very manipulative. And because you and your way of thinking it's something that is constantly changing, and it's possible to manipulate the way of thinking. And it is something that is used in the like marketing industry. And because of those influences, some people feel like, okay, they start to feel like their own self-image has sort of become more aligned with these values that are more about showing skin and showing whatever they consider beauty of themselves, and to be more aligned with that image that is sold through media to them. And when they start to ascribe these positive values towards that image, because honestly you can sort of frame like whatever as this is having positive like values, and make people feel positive emotions towards something. It is possible to do that through different marketing strategies, and it can be a process that evolve over time, such as positive emotions and connections towards, I don't know, alcohol or something else. You can have all of these positive like attributes and like ascribing status and stuff towards such sort of damaging and harmful things, and people are not even paying attention to it, because most of the day people are unconscious of what they are doing. They don't think about what they do in relation to what it actually is. So it's more about, if you are individualized, people are often relying on their feelings. Okay, do I feel that this thing has a positive value? Do I feel I have a positive emotional connection to it? If you have that towards something, even if it's a damaging thing, you still will go for it because it is your own personal choice. So it can be very like, you know, the religion is also a form of institution that is having a form of, you know, some form of set of ideas and ideals. Maybe not so much ideals at the end of the day when you start looking at how different religious people are actually perceiving their own religion and describing it, but it has some form of disciplining types of practices and maybe, you know, sort of thing like principles maybe that is actually sort of by disciplining you towards the outside world, it creating more space and freedom on the inside, versus going towards something that is more materialistic. It's gonna, in your perception, it will give you more like freedom towards the outside but less freedom on the inside. So because it's like the materialistic worldview is not really only reflecting like the spiritual self, you know. And so again, some people might say, okay, religious attributes like that are displayed in how a person is like dressing, such as if you're wearing hijab, that's not like the essence of the religion. Now there's no essence of the religion because again, most people are gonna give different descriptions to their religion depending on their own subjective mind, you know, where they are like looking at the religion and explaining it from. But it's still like there is, when you're wearing something that is disciplining you towards the, you know, senses and stuff in this external world, you are at the same time creating more freedom for yourself on the inside of actually reflecting upon your own actions towards the outside. So it does fill a function because you are not like just indulging in the outside. Now indulgement might also be like perceived in religion as different ways. It could be perceived as a what is it called? Not a punishment. What is the opposite? Like a reward for something that you have done, and you're getting that reward in this life. But at the same time, it's also about the balance, you know. And I think that the more of spiritual and like religious practices that you are incorporating in combination, you will sort of have maybe both of the things. So you will have some form from your own perspective and from your own life point and whatever you are supposed to face on your path, you will have like certain things that are just aligning according to what is appropriate for you. So I think when you have like this when you have ascribed like positive emotions and attribute towards a capitalistic and materialistic form of, you know, lifestyle, or, you know, Western culture where, you know, being more, I don't know, wearing maybe more like revealing clothes and stuff is gonna give you more status in the society. When you're ascribing more values towards such things, it doesn't mean that it is really the right thing, you know, because it's not really aligning you with maybe the religious institution and with spiritual aspects. Like I feel like sometimes people, when they try to incorporate religion with other institutions and, you know, just being in a culture that is more westernized, they are sort of trying to use the religion to motivate and support them in their choices they make as a consumer, versus perhaps finding some alternatives within the religious institution. Now it is very hard actually today to be to not be a consumer, because most of the choices you make and like just to eat something, you cannot just go about without being a consumer, because this is part of being in this capitalistic society. So somehow you will probably be forced to, you know, use the religion as a supportive, like, you know, sort of guide in how you should be conducting your life in this capitalistic frame that you are part and living in and under. So that is one thing, but at the same time, do you have your own choice as a free being in this capitalistic frame? Or do you have any choices of actually taking some own like paths and maybe making choices that are against the mainstream, you know? So, and when I talk about mainstream, I do not necessarily talk about, you know, the religious, like being a believer, because being a believer in Islam is very like flexible, because it's a very large concept. It's same as saying that you are a citizen. Being a citizen under a state means you are controlled by the state, but whatever those terms and conditions might be will depend upon what state you are connected to. So being a believer will connect you to something that is larger than you, but still there might be some room from your own perspective, from your subjective perspective on what a believer might be and how you can incorporate other things into that actual sort of goal or identity and stuff. So yeah, so I think that when you are in this capitalistic sort of world, you have to think for yourself, like, okay, do you want to just become a product in the landscape of the city and just be like, you know, just following the latest fashion trends and just displaying yourself as an object to the public and being like, you know, I don't know, being not so much like respected in the way, but being more of an object in a negative way, if you get my point. So it's like to have these things in your mind, because a lot of the things that we ascribe as a high social status today is actually having quite negative consequences for the person over time. Like to be someone who's out partying a lot and drinking a lot of alcohol, it's not going to have so good consequences for the person, and maybe not even for the people around, because it's like something that is not really creating respect of the self, and towards, like, people are not treating the people who, you know, are maybe in certain settings in a respectful way and so forth. So it becomes more a way of consuming things and everything. And because this consumerism is very much like incorporated in or very very like fundamental way of thinking, it also applies to like how we are consuming identities, how we are consuming lifestyles, how we are consuming whatever, you know, people, fashion. We're consuming everything constantly, but from this like religious institution as a form of disciplining system that you can take with you into this capitalistic world, you sort of have a defense towards being consumed by the society, you know, because the society is like, you are part of it, you know, so you have to be adaptable and you have to be, you know, living by some of the rules, but you still become almost like a product that can be consumed by the society, and you are bearing the risk for actually that consumption. If you are going to work, you get burnout, you are not burning the risk, but you are bearing the risks for whatever happens to you at work. You know, if you get burnout, that is your you are like bearing those consequences. So it's the same thing like with most things, and I feel like with, you know, wearing a hijab and like being in this religious also like field and institution, you have like certain disciplines towards actually mastering your own life in a capitalistic environment, not just by obeying all of the aspects of it, but actually like disciplining your own perspective towards what you have around you in that society by using the religion as a guideline for something that might be more appropriate, but it's not really something everyone is considering in their daily life, because you will meet most people who are not considering religion as something that is even of interest, or even they will not ascribe it to have some meaning. But it is both disciplining and it's also about spiritual aspect. And at the end of the day, if you think about you being provided and controlled by a state, as a citizen, the state doesn't really going to protect you and care for you after you are dead. Like when you are dead, what's happening after that? Certain religions such as Islam do have solutions and explanations, and have, like, you know, things that you can do in this life that will help you once you are dead, once things has left this whole materialistic understanding of reality. And that's why when you are here, you have to constantly remind yourself that what you see as part within this capitalistic society is only mirroring certain values that are, you know, ascribed to in this setting. And if you feel Islam has those other tools that will carry you a little bit longer, then it might be possible for you to actually try and stick to them even when you are in this capitalistic field, you know. So that's why I think when people are like displaying different images in social media and things, and they're like, you know, taking off their hijab and stuff, I feel like of course it's sending a message not only to the people who also are wearing hijabs, but it's sending a message to other people who are not wearing it, because they feel like, okay, this person is obeying the rules of the mainstream and is now part of the mainstream culture, or part of the mainstream consumer identity and culture. And it's maybe that is not symbolizing what's going on the inside of the person, but it's still like, why do you have to display the outside without it reflecting the inside? Do you get my point? If you are religious, why is it not displayed on the outside of you as a person, if you are really having that on the inside? Of course, some people would say, okay, well, religious expressions are also something that is bound to a context, where the text, and by the way, I will make part 2 of this because it can get too long.